Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
This is our 5th week in exploring the power within us, right? So the first week was really about discovering there was a power, that it was within us. And the second week, how to bring that in expression and kind of what is our role in that. The third was about the power of our thoughts and the power that we have to choose which way we go, how we use that power. Last week, Reverend Jean Marie brought the message around the power of prayer, the spirit of prayer, and how we link ourselves back up consciously to help guide those thoughts and to bring that into fuller expression. Today, we are going to be further exploring what to do with this great power. Because it's not just something we instantly understand. It isn't something that we automatically maybe even have had taught to us or that we've been trained up in, that we've even been told, maybe even until we've come into this ministry, perhaps, whatever part of our lives that we actually began to believe that there was something really powerful within us and that we could actually make a difference in the world, how we use it and how it is that we respond. And so what I want to do tonight is start sort of a little bit of a primer in a way about how it is that the universe really works and how we can interact with it to work it. You game? So here's the deal. Jesus' teachings in the Bible and in the Gospels in particular, really, which is where he is in the Gospels. And so I'm a Bible scholar. You can tell that, right? So Jesus gave us a lot of teachings that in traditional Christianity came down to us as laws, as warnings, as threats at times of how it is that if we weren't this way and if we didn't do this and if we didn't give up everything that we had and if we didn't follow Jesus, there would be, hell to pay, right? There would be all kinds of threats and that to live a good life was a really narrow little road. And it was not for the faint or the weak-hearted, that this was really something that people had to really let go of a lot of their human desires in order to follow. Saints, really, were the only ones who were guaranteed any kind of a passage. But that's not it at all. That's not what Jesus came to do at all. And it isn't what his teachings really tell us. They really tell us the way the world really works. And so one of the lessons that Jesus taught was this. This comes in Matthew chapter 6. This is part of the Sermon on the Mount. He says, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." And so how that came down to us, and certainly came down to me as raised Catholic, was that the treasures, the treasures of the earth and the wealth and the things and the competition for having stuff and all of that, fame, fortune, all those things, all of that could be taken from you. All of that you could lose. Instead, store up treasures in heaven. Do good things. Live a virtuous life such that a gem could be placed in your crown in heaven waiting for you, so that when you die, you will be crowned with the blessings and the beautiful acts that you've done all of your life. Doesn't that sound like heaven to you? It didn't even really sell me in the 5th grade. I really didn't, I was like, well, then what? You know, it was kind of like, that's cool. But then so everybody can see what you did or didn't do or whatever. Doesn't that sound more like heaven for ego? It sounds like ego heaven, you know, like, look what I did. Look what oh, she's got more than me. I'm going over here, you know. So you know, it's really not that treasures in heaven. What it really is about is that we are practicing using the gifts that we have, bringing them into the world, and what we're actually doing is lifting our consciousness, using the power of our thoughts. Treasures in heaven is actually the practice of using what it is that we have and practicing understanding how the world really works. And as we do that, we grow our consciousness, as we grow in compassion, we grow in understanding, we grow in fearlessness, defenselessness. We grow in a opening and a sort of a hollowing out of our souls, of our very spirit, so that we can embrace and we can bring more good into the world. That's the treasures of heaven. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. What that really means is that where your treasure is, your heart will be also, is that your heart, this part of you right here, not just the thinking part, the deciding part, but the heart of you, the real part of you that has your values. It shows where what you value. It shows what you feel strongly about, what is really calling to you. Those are the things that really bring power into expression. And it is also the things that where our power comes through our heart, our love, and the ways in which we express. It is sort of like an accelerant. Do you know what I mean? Because we were talking about the choices we make in our thoughts, the choices that we choose, right or wrong, left or right, up or down, good or not so good, and the ways in which we operate, the thought process. But the heart adds accelerant, it adds energy, and it makes everything far more powerful, more lasting, more real. And that's true even if we choose amiss, if we choose for the wrong reasons, and our hearts are full of resentment or full of anger or full of, wanting to get back at somebody. That is also fueling and more powerful too, using our power in a way that is destructive and a way in which it breaks down relationship, as well as takes us out of a higher vibration and brings us down into a much lower vibration. Treasures in heaven really are about how is it that we lift spirit, how is it that we vibrate at a higher level so that we can bring that light. Light vibrates at a higher level. All of the ways in which we can express from the energy that we have been given. You see, because in fact, there is a very narrow range in which we perceive the world. But when we recognize that what it is that matters is how we feel here first, and where we feel it, and how it is that we express it, and how we allow it to give life to our words, and how is it that we allow our thoughts and our ideas to create. This is first and foremost passion and inspiration and love and the ways in which we want to share who we are and what we are from the inside out. So allowing ourselves to be more vulnerable, but also at the same time more powerful. Eleanor Roosevelt said, one's philosophy is not best expressed in words. It is expressed in the choices one makes. And the choices we make are ultimately our responsibility. So basically what she's saying is that when we make our choices, our lives express those choices, right? So we leave a whole pattern behind us in our lives that we can see every choice we've ever made has brought us to this moment. It is it's a living part of us. For good, for ill, whatever we've learned, whatever we have digested, whatever we have yet to digest about our past or about our lives and integrate it, understand, wherever we are in that wholeness healing process, every choice that we have made has brought us to this moment. It is whether we've done it consciously or unconsciously. We are the sum total of all of those choices. And This is who we are. And if we think for a moment that people can't see it, feel it, smell it on us, you've got another thing coming. We are really the sum total of everything. And I say that to you with a sense of joy about that, because we are messy compilations. We are learning. We are human beings in process. And when we do that, we recognize that sometimes we hit beautifully and other times we miss tragically, and all the things in between, right? Therefore, we are perfectly calibrated for acceptance and tolerance as well, which are our higher vibrations. None of us escapes the messiness of humanity, no matter how hard we try, no matter where we have come from, no matter what we've learned, no matter what philosophy we have followed or been taught. This is our great adventure, and we are doing it together and in one another's company. Consciousness, treasures of heaven. Choice, the ideas that we hold and the ways in which we choose. And how does that show up? Charles Fillmore says this. He says, watch your thoughts when you're handling money. Why did he have to bring that up anyway? Watch your thoughts when you're handling money, because your money is attached through your mind to the one source of all substance and all money. When you think of your money, which is visible, as something directly attached to an invisible source that is giving or withholding according to your thought, you have the key to all riches and the reason for all lack. This is the doorway. This is just a symbol. This is just a manifestation. It's a substance out here. But this in itself has no power. It has no attraction or anything. This is really just a consequence of choices that we've made, of the attitudes that we hold, of the amount of love that we have in our hearts, the ways in which we express that, the ways in which we give of ourselves, and the ways in which we are open to receiving. The choices that we make is in alignment with that. That's how powerful our thoughts are, but there is something beneath our chins that really is the power source, the place that empowers all of the directions of our choices. When we have shame and guilt about money, actually, I don't know anyone who doesn't have shame and guilt about money. I'm just going to jump out there and say every one of us out here do. We either have too much of it, and we feel guilty about that, and there are certain people we'll tell and other people we won't, or we have too little of it. And we will, again, tell some people about it and other people not. And whatever that is, those amounts are immaterial, aren't they? The only thing that matters is what we judge, what we think, how we use our thought process to digest that idea or that reality. Jesus taught about the widow's mite and the rich young man. And that was also used in some ways to make us feel like we had to give everything we had. It was like an all or nothing story. The widow's mite was Jesus sitting in the temple watching with his disciples when a widow comes and gives 2 pence, and she puts 2 pence into the coffer for the temple. And Jesus said, that widow has given all she has to live on. That's how powerful she is. This is a great gift, that a bag of money from a rich man is only a portion of his wealth. This is the greater gift. He also taught the story of the rich young man who came to Jesus full of himself and also full of learning. He was also a dedicated student of the scriptures, of the Torah, and he wanted to be taught the very final lesson. He wanted to check out all that he knew, and he asked Jesus, what else can I do? I have done all the things. I have learned all of the lessons. What else can I do? And he says, now what you can do is Sell everything that you have and give it to the poor. And he had nothing more to say about that because he had many possessions. He had many things, and he walked away sad. Both of these stories to us were often used as this idea that as long as we had all possessions and things out here, we couldn't be spiritual at the same time and have possessions. But that isn't what Jesus used these stories for. He used the stories to tell us more about how it is that the widow's mite reminds us that it isn't this that sustains me, that I am sustained by something greater, and that the faith that I have and that I possess does not keep me from giving away in generosity as I feel led to do. Because what sustains me is not this. This is not the difference between me living or dying. There is something, a power greater through me. What sustains me is where I put my faith and allow the channels to open for sustenance. The rich young man also is the same way. It was an opportunity for him to recognize that the next level of understanding wasn't going to come out of a book, and it wasn't going to come out of something somebody else could impart to him. It had to be now experiential. He had to let go of everything he identified with. A rich young man was not a man of his own making. He was the son of a rich man, undoubtedly, and therefore had grown up in that all his life, and he identified with it. Now comes the time in his spiritual growth, if he's willing to take the step, to open himself to who he really is if all of these things go away. We don't know if he took that step or not, but he did go and think about it. The stories that Jesus tells and the ways in which he taught is always about how to use the universe. That the gifts of the universe and the laws and the way the universe really works is not the way we think and not the way we've set it up socially. Human beings do not understand the way the world really works with this. We learn it with this. The rich young man had to ask himself, who is he and what is his purpose? In chapter 7 of Matthew, Jesus said this, "Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and the measure you use, it will be measured to you." Judgment, this right here is the piece of us, the part of us, this magnificent machine, this mechanism for understanding and for cogitating and for taking in information and data and processing is extremely limited. It is extremely limited. And it also has the power of judgment, but it is up here. Judgment comes from up here where we try to weigh something, sift through it, right or left, up or down. It is an important part of navigating in a 3D world, but it's not always reliable when it comes to the spiritual world. And what we often do is use our judgment amiss, right? We use our judgment in ways in which we judge others and judge ourselves harshly. This judgment that comes from us and the judgment that we use is actually the thing that separates us from one another. And it's also what makes us feel wrong, bad, and stupid, and unforgiven, and unworthy. And out of that only comes more of the same. Because what we do, what we put out, what we give, actually comes from the same place of what we have received and what we have done to ourselves from one another. You see, out there, where we're judging and we're trying to project what's happening around us, it doesn't exist. I don't mean that you guys don't exist. I mean, you don't exist the way I might think you do. Understood? I don't exist the way you think I do. We project onto each other and the things in our lives, we project other things because not by what we see and what is out here, but as we are. It's sort of like walking around with a virtual reality headset all the time, right? We're all walking around with our own headsets, and we're walking around and we're interpreting the world as we see it and as we've chosen whatever system we're running, whatever one we're operating on, however we're feeling in the moment, however good we feel about ourselves or how poorly we feel about ourselves, right? But we're really not actually taking in reality. We're not really set up to be able to do that with this. You see, the prefrontal cortex can only take in a very limited bandwidth of light rays. We don't even see all the light that's here. We also can't hear all of the different levels, sound levels either. We have a very narrow range of the things we can actually perceive. And of all of that and the sensory perceptions and all the things coming at us, we are very limited in how much we can even take in and become aware of at any given moment using this. So we have to pick and choose, and we have patterns of habits, and this is so not the world. It's just our capacity, our limited capacity to respond to it and to deal with it. This, however, not saddled by thought and not making value judgments, but simply taking it in and receiving and allowing ourselves to pour out and be in some sort of exchange of energy and open energetically. Now this is where we feel ourselves bathed in the vibrations of what life really is and of what we really are and of who we are and how big we really are, and how we can simply embrace and love and accept and live and create. And that has no limit. The measure you use will be measured back to you. That is not a threat. It was presented to me as a threat that if you judge others, God would use that same measurement on you. God would treat you the way you treat others. Watch out. I was duly chastised by that, and I tried to, live in fear of that as much as possible. But that's not what Jesus meant. Jesus meant that you will only receive as much as you are able to send out. That whatever it is that you use to measure, whatever it is that you use to judge, will be used against you. Why? Because it's the aperture you're using. And wherever you look with that aperture, that's all you're going to see. And that includes when you put it back on yourself. People who do mean and awful things to others, people who judge and hurt others, imagine who they live with inside. They live from some form of ongoing hell, no doubt. It is not possible to find peace if you're putting out hurt and pain. It's not possible. The measure you use will be measured against you. Similarly, anything that is powerful and beautiful and loving, anything that is generous and creative, anything that is joy-filled, anything that is a moment of kindness, that is the same spirit, the same energy that is now being used in you, and you will feel that. Which actually brings me to the great feedback loop. Ever heard of that before? The great feedback loop? No. The great feedback loop is actually the way the universe really works, and where all of these laws that I've been describing, some of these, and this is just a partial list, as you well know, if you've read the Gospels. Jesus taught a lot of wonderful things. But they all reflect on this one great idea that whatever it is that we put out, we will also receive back. That is the way the universe is constructed. This great feedback loop is actually designed to be a blessing. And it's actually designed, predicated on our ability to choose. This is how it works. Whenever we choose a thought, whenever it is that we decide something and we speak it, or we put it out, or we express it, or we believe it, or we start living from it, or all of the choices that we make in our lives are predicated on belief system that we have or that we hold, then whatever energy comes of those decisions, of those choices, of those words, of those actions, puts out an energy field, and that energy field doesn't go anywhere. Why? Because we are one. And because we are one, everything we put out has to return to us. There is no place else for it to go. Do you see? We are deeply embedded and connected to one another. It doesn't just go out into space and dissipate. There is no space. We are everywhere at once because we are eternal, limitless beings in our nature. And so whatever it is that we put out, because we aren't confined to a 3D world, everything we do has no place to go but come right back to us. And so the great feedback loop is this, that whatever we are mindful of, whatever it is that we practice, whatever it is that we intend, with the accelerant of our hearts, making our hearts free and clear and open to love and to give, to bless, that love comes through the choices that we make consciously as possible, and that what we bring is greater light, life, and love, and that we receive it back. Because the great feedback loop is neutral. And the great feedback loop is designed so that you will get positive reinforcement every time you put something good out into the world. You feel better, don't you? When you say something sweet, when you give a note of appreciation or thanks, you feel good about it, don't you? When you donate something that no longer fits you and you see somebody who receives it with gratitude, you feel good. When you give of yourself, when you serve, no matter how small or how great that service is, you feel great. And it actually makes you want to do it more and more. And that's how the big feedback loop in the sky wants you to do, because that is actually how it's set up. But the corollary is also true, because it's neutral. And so if you think angry thoughts, if you have unforgiveness, if there's somebody you have something against and you cannot get over it and you cannot let it go, and you are full of resentment and anger and spite, that too gets sent out and reflected back. That it comes back to us over and over again. Again, as a hope that we will feel yucky about it and we'll stop doing it. But somehow, we have over time abused the great feedback loop in such a way that we have rationalized and made all kinds of other decisions about what is actually happening, and we have cut ourselves off from our sense of responsibility around it. We've never actually been taught it because most people don't know that that's how the world really works. Although we do have one interesting saying, don't we? What goes around comes around, right? You'd think we learned that on the playground, right? What goes around comes around. If it's not the volleyball, or the tether ball, I should say, it's a threat. Somebody threatens and says, oh, what goes around comes around. You'll get yours. We have it in our culture, but we don't have it in our consciousness to know that the reality of that is that this is our power, this is our choice, and this is where we give from whatever our hearts are full of, the treasure of our hearts. Beware where you place your vision, what choices you make, because there your heart will be also. And whatever your heart brings power and strength to it. So using our power properly is to remember that we are in some great collusion with all that is, that the great feedback loop in the sky is our friend, it is our tool, actually. And that every time we can make a conscious choice and come from an open heart of love, of generosity, of forgiveness, of willingness to accept and tolerate and to be receptive, then more blessings and more goodness and more grace and more truth and more power and more beauty and more healing happens. Oh, and yeah, and you get some more money too. Yeah, money happens too. Where our treasure is, what sustains us, what is our purpose? These are the questions. Rumi said, this being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival, a new opportunity. Frank Liddy said this, remember, you have 2 lives. You get your second life when you realize you have only one. Choice. How then shall we live? As if we only have one life. And the power to truly live it is our choice. God bless you all.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.